On this final episode of the fifth season of the Camp Owners podcast, we're going out with a bang. We are going out with Steve Maguire. Oh my gosh. Steve is amazing. He's with goturnstone.com. That is his consulting and speaking business. And just a little tagline, every kid deserves a champion. He makes every effort to get people more awesome at working with kids so you can make the impact you believe in. I mean, that alone speaks camp. But Steve is awesome. On this episode, we talk about the first 90 minutes of your training, and that is the tailwind for the rest of your summer. There are so many amazing and inspirational and practical tidbits and ideas and thoughts, and gives you all the feels and the vibes. And it was just awesome. You can tell my voice, I'm pumped about it. So listen to this episode, enjoy it, be inspired by it, let it be that tailwind, honestly, for you going into summer. So thank you for being a listener of the Camp Owners Podcast. We wish you an amazing summer. Enjoy this episode, and we'll see you next season.
This is the Camp Owners Podcast from Go Camp Pro, exploring best practices and issues that professionals in the private camp industry face every day. You can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod.
Celebrating 30 years, CampBrain camp management software not only provides a great tool and caring support for your best ever workdays, but a delightful registration experience for parents. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspod.
Activity schedules are the backbone of every camper's experience. If there's a staffing change, it's really hard to find a person that knows your camp and the nuance your schedule takes. Come check out Camptivities to learn more about our scheduling tools designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com. Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We are going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly Shuna. I am the co-owner and executive director of Hidden Pines Ranch, located in Stillwater, Minnesota.
And hi again, everybody. My name is Howie Grossinger, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in the summer and in the suburbs, of Toronto. If you're looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think it would be useful to other camp owners or aspiring camp owners in your circle, please feel free to send them a note to listen. And before we get the festivities started, a huge thank you to our sponsors, Camp Brain and Camptivities, for supporting this podcast and being such great friends to Kelly and myself as we are now at the end of our fifth season. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, Howie. My hair is starting to feel a little bit on fire. The pre-camp where I'm out like 30 some days, but besides that, I'm pretty calm, cool, collected, or trying to be. How are you?
Yeah, feeling the same, but we've done this for a while, Kelly. I'll remind you, you've got a great team, as we all do, and we're going to be okay.
Yes,
And this is such a fun and exciting time of year, and super excited to close out our season with our guest and the topic that we're going to be talking about, which is sort of in keeping in tradition with how we want to send our listeners off. And that is something around training and staff training specifically and pre-camp, all those good things. So once again, as we close out our season of the Camp Owners Podcast, we stick with tradition, and we are wishing all of you a healthy, happy, and successful camp summer. But before we say farewell for another season, today we have Steve Maguire, who many of us have seen at many camp conferences. Some of you have had him at your camp, and above all, someone who has provided incredibly helpful insight into working with our staff, assessing and improving our operations, and generally providing fresh perspectives on how to make camp better for everyone. He also does it with unmatched energy, which we hope to harness today. Steve, welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kelly and Howie. Psyched to be here. We're going to have a blast.
We are so excited to chat with you about training. And I know that as a first time guest, which we're thrilled to have you, we often kick things off by wanting our audience to learn more about your origin story into the camp world and an update on the things that are keep you energized and charged to continue to do the things you do for the industry. So why don't we start with that? And then we're going to jump right in to exploring all the good things you can share with the audience.
Great. Yeah, and as I told you before we started recording, please shut me down because it could be like 3 hours later and I could be like, so when I was 7, so you got to be careful. So I grew up the youngest of 10 kids, which actually is like growing up. I tell people it's like going to a summer camp, but growing up at one. And so being in such a big family, it was wild. I mean, we ate family style like camps do. We just all the things you think of you do at camp, we did a lot of those things. My mother would ring a bell, like it was all these things. It was amazing. So I grew up the youngest of 10 kids. I grew up 9 miles northwest of Boston, Massachusetts, in a town called Burlington, Massachusetts, and started working at a day camp recreation department in my hometown. A bunch of my siblings had done that. And so I mean, I couldn't go anywhere in town being the youngest of 10 and not have everybody know what family it was part of because no one had that many kids. So I got a bunch of those jobs and I worked as a day camp counselor. And then when I was in college, made the decision because I was majoring in education at the time. And one of my brothers my oldest brother, who was an education professor at the University of Alaska, said, you should get as much experience as you can working with kids because it'll help you when you go to interview for your teaching job. So totally makes sense. And if there is anybody in education right now that's watching the podcast and listening, I can't advise them enough to do that. Get as much experience as you can with kids because as soon as I sat down as a zero experience teacher, I had all this experience working with kids. And I remember my first principal that hired me, I got hired 2 weeks before I graduated from college because I really believe this because of my summer camp experience. You know, one of his responses to me after he hired me was, if you can do what you did at a summer camp, you're going to be fine here in teaching. So it was incredibly helpful. So I worked for multiple years at a day camp, and then I got an overnight gig at a camp in New Hampshire called Camp Coniston, YMCA Camp Coniston, which was awesome. Then I took a program director job at Camp Half Moon in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. And in my career, I was teaching at the time. I just started teaching, and it was difficult to have that balance because I was also coaching football. And I took sort of a leave from working at camp because it was just too much to be at camp and try to be a successful football coach. And so I coached football for 3 or 4 years at the school that I currently teach at now. But then, once the football piece ended, I continued being a day camp director for 4 or 5 years in my hometown where I teach now as well. So, and I had just started, I had always said to myself, I want to do some training work because I had sat through so many trainings. Please know nothing against other trainers or other camps or anything. But I had sat through so many trainings as a camp employee and as someone that attended conferences. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way we can do this. And I had very little experience. I had my teaching experience, which basically presenting at conferences is a large version of teaching. And I said to myself, I want to present at conferences, and I think I want to do some trainings as well. So the first conference I ever went to, this was 22 years ago, was the Upstate New York conference. I had to pay my own way to get there. I literally showed up to speak at the conference. They hired me for 3 sessions, and it doesn't matter who it was. The person was like, you need to also register for the conference to speak. And I was like, what? Doesn't make any sense. And I learned one of my greatest lessons in business right there. Like that makes no sense as a business owner. Like this, you just hired this guy to do 3 sessions. Now you're making him pay to go to the conference. And again, nothing against that conference. This was a long time ago, but it was a lesson learned that I think we'll get to today. So I spoke at that conference and I loved it. Like I absolutely loved it. I finished my first session. I'm like, I want to do this for a really long time. I went and spoke at another conference in New England that year. And then there were some camp directors that came up and said, hey, we'd like to bring you to come do staff training. So I did my first staff training. I literally started my business in April of 2004. So it's been 21 years. And in that time, I've worked with thousands of summer camps. And again, this isn't a, hey, look at me. It's just some numbers are good because why do people hire somebody? A huge part of it for me now is experience. So I've worked with thousands of camps and tens of thousands of summer camp staff, and I've seen a lot of awesome stuff. And I've made a ton of mistakes in the business, which I've learned. I feel like I've learned a lot from now, but I've had a lot of incredible experiences and made a lot of great friendships way beyond what I ever thought when I started this. That was not my intended outcome. My intended outcome was to go and do some great staff trainings and maybe inspire some staff. And now it's created me these lifelong friendships that anybody knows that they've been in it long enough. That's just what happens. So it's been great. And I could literally do an entire podcast with you called War Stories of just all the stuff I've seen. So add that as the episode as well as the weather one we're going to do next year.
We're going to do that one for sure next time. And Kelly, I got to know Steve about 10 years ago at Tri-State, and I think his explanation of his journey into this world of camp and training, I think what becomes instantly appealing, and we're going to get a sense of that, is that he's willing to just be very honest about the things that he's messed up and the things that he's tried, or advice he gave 10 years ago that's not as relevant as it is today. And I think that's been a feature of what I've appreciated, Steve, which is a great segue to our topic, because it was at this year's Tri-State where I thought to myself, sitting in a session that he delivered, thinking, like, why haven't Kelly and I had Steve on the show? Like, this has to happen. So I immediately went up to him, that rush of people who want to say, I'm trying not to be too assertive, but I had to say, Steve, reintroduce myself. He goes, hey, how? And I said, we got to get you on the podcast. And so we're here. And I want to start, and then we're going to just free flow this whole thing, Steve.
Great.
But the one thing I wrote down that I keep looking back at is, let the first 90 minutes be the tailwind for the summer. And boy, oh boy, did I think about that. And, I've said on the podcast before, we're in the midst of a generational succession plan at our day camp. I was sitting beside my daughter, and I looked at Jordan, and I said, that we got to dig into that and just make this moment. And so I want to explore a whole bunch of stuff that you shared during that, but use this as a springboard to having you maybe share with us, like, why do you feel that, and how did you come to like dig into that the way that you did in that great session you provided?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I know we don't know each other too well, but even hearing you saying that literally gives me chills, because I mean it. And if you know me well enough, that's true, that it really is the most important piece of your summer. Obviously, there's so much other important things that happen. However, I have just seen that first 90 minutes incredibly poorly done, where you turn off everyone and you literally, I mean it, you spend 8 weeks, 6 weeks, however long your camp is, recovering from destroying your staff in the first 90 minutes. And I'll get to that in a second. But the genesis of the session came from, shout out to my friend Jack Schott, who I hope, have you had Jack before? Okay, great. So Jack and I did a training together last summer, and Jack and I go way back. He was a 19-year-old counselor when I did a training at Camp Stella Maris when he was working there, right? So we go back a long way. And Jack pulled me aside and he said, Steve, you just need to concentrate on, you should be the person. Again, this is not a commercial. Please know this, folks that are listening. But he pulled me aside and said, you should be the person that everybody brings in for the first 90 minutes of the summer. And then you like set them loose. And he said, that's what you should concentrate your business model on. And I was like, Jack, I appreciate you saying that. And I said, well, to talk more about it. He said, because he's like, you just blend all your, and again, I premise this in humility, I promise. I know it may not sound that way, but he said, you take all of your 28 years of teaching and then this practical, just kind of tell it like it is. And you just throw it at people in 90 minutes and they're going to walk out and be like, okay, this is going to be the most important job I ever do in my life. It's going to be, I have to be awesome at it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to be exhausted. And he said, those are the things I got out of the session you just did. So what I mean by, I guess, the tailwind is that if that starts off, that first 90 minutes, I use 90 minutes as a term. It's loose, 2 hours, hour, whatever it is, that it's the first full exposure of your admin team or your directors to your actual staff. And if that starts off positive, energetic, but not crazy energetic, like it doesn't have to be manic for 90 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be like that, but just joy filled and fun and informative, while at the same time being entertaining. You set the tone for that's how you want the summer to be for kids and staff and everyone. And I'll give you some perfect examples. So if you begin with, well, if you start off a meeting, and I've seen this, you start off with a PowerPoint that just is going to, people would rather sharpen a pencil and poke themselves in the eye with for 10 minutes. You're going to lose people immediately. If you have visuals that are not appealing, if you don't have music playing when people are coming in, if all those little basic tool makers, and then you're opening 5 minutes as a director. Welcome to our camp. We're so glad that you're here. You had a choice of so many other things you could do this summer. We believe that being with us is going to make a difference in your life and also in the lives of our customers, those little kids that are coming to us. And I always tell directors, if they don't have, and I use this term all the time, if they don't have the juice to do this, take someone on your administrative team. They all know you're the director. If you don't have that juice, it's fine. But get somebody on your administrative team that can bring it. And again, I mean this in the most respectful way, because this is true. If you're boring, and there are directors that are boring, but they're awesome at their job and they've been there a long time and camp loves them, but that might not be their personality. If you're not super enthused, get somebody in front of your staff that is. They'll all know you're still the director. You're not losing anything by doing that, but you got to bring people that will just get people amped up. And I just think the more you engage people early in the vibe of your summer, you set the tone for that. And I've seen it done poorly too. And I said this in the tri-state session. I've shown up to places where, I mean, it is like a morgue to start, and staff is confused as to where to go. There's really no direction as to what's happening. There's no agenda. And you'd think it's 2025, and I say this all the time in my work, but you would think by now we would chat GPT, like all the possible answers we have, we would avoid some of this. But incredibly, it still happens. Like I showed up at a place last summer, and I'm fine if they hear this. I mean, I gave them this feedback where I was asked to do the training, and I told them all my tech needs ahead of time. And the director said to me, I'm pretty sure we have a projector over there in the corner, and it was literally buried under old board games like Monopoly and Sorry, and the cord was wrapped around those board games, and they had no screen. And I had staff members coming up to me asking me, do you know where we're supposed to go? I'm like, I'm the guest. I don't even work here. Like, so I know people are like, there's no way that's true. It's 100% true. And then the feedback I got from the director later in the summer was, yeah, the summer, it was literally only a week-long camp. She said, yeah, the week was really tough. And I, in my brain, said, 0% of me is surprised, because that's how the week started. So I guess I know I'm trying to I know I'm saying it enthusiastically, but I can't even emphasize enough the importance of the joy you can create in that first 90 minutes. Everyone should be on fire. Like, people should be ready to run out the door that the kids are coming to camp. And if it's not like that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're going to be chasing enthusiasm for the rest of the summer.
Do you love your camp management software? This is what Sarah from Tom Sawyer Camp says about her solution. We love everything about Camp Rain. The software has helped us improve all of our systems when it comes to running our camp programs. From online registration to communicating with our families to billing and running payments, the list goes on and on. We are customers for life. Celebrating 30 years dedicated to complete camp management, Camp Brain not only provides a great tool and caring support for your best ever work days, but a delightful registration experience for parents. They're continually refining their solution to deliver exactly what camp owners need now and will next. From SMS texting to integrated payment solutions and more. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspot.
Every year, it's the same thing. Lots of hours spent working on the daily schedules, only for there to be mistakes, missed activities, and lots of stress. Why is it so difficult? There's got to be a better way. And there is Camptivities, an activity scheduler made specifically for camps. Group scheduling or camper scheduling, we've got you covered. Different day schedules, no problem. Auto scheduling, elective scheduling, batch scheduling, schedule the way that works for your camp. With over 60 reports, you'll be able to see the data easily. Now's the time to implement a better way to schedule. Go to camptivities.com and set up a time to chat. Make activity scheduling easier, less stressful, and more efficient. We'd love to show you the next big thing in camp, so don't wait. Start the onboarding process now when you have the time. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. I love the simplification, and it's not simple, but I just love your 90 minutes. And what do you want camp to be like this summer? And literally, how do you do that in the 90 minutes? Like you said, joy, fun, inform them, entertaining. Like, I mean, it just makes it not easy, but so intentional of like, okay, is my first 90 minutes fun? Is it joyful? Is it engaging? Is it have the juice? Like, I think that's something so simple for camp owners and directors to think about is like, what is that 90 minutes saying about us? Is
Yeah, and I hope
saying what we want? And if not, we got to switch it up because that's
agree. And I want people to take this activity. Like this is the simplest thing you could possibly do after you introduce people is get everybody now ask yourself where you can create movement. So there's a guy, his name is Chuck Hillman. He taught at the University of Illinois. And last I knew, he was teaching at Northeastern University. And he's a behavior movement psychologist. He studies how movement helps our brains work. And so I ask camp directors and owners and those making the decisions to think about where can I incorporate movement in the first 90 minutes. So for example, I do a simple activity called Flip 4. There's no, call it whatever you want. I don't care. But get people physically standing up, get them into groups of 4. And it's kind of, someone asked me or said to me one time, gave me the feedback. They're like, this is kind of like speed dating. I'm like, no, we don't want to do that. But you want to get people in small groups and ask questions like, why are kids awesome? What are you looking forward to the most about this summer? If you've worked with kids before, what were some of your positive experiences? What are you afraid of? Some very simple, basic questions. It's August 22nd, and it's the last day of camp. What do you want campers to say about the summer they've had with you? And every time you do that, you get into a brand new group of 4 people. And so you're getting all these different perspectives, and you have about a minute in each 4-person group. And you just roll through that. And then you come back together as a whole group, and you have an awesome discussion about that. So now there's been movement. You're learning something about other people you're working with. You're talking about these huge picture ideas of camp. To me, that's like the biggest one is now you're back together and you're all answering, okay, what are some things you heard about why kids are awesome? Kids are fun. They're funny. They bring different stories every day, whatever they say. But now you're setting the tone for the theme of why we're here. Whereas you could do, and I've seen this still in 2024, we're going through the staff manual. We have these important things we need to cover today. Do it later. Do it later. Do it at another time. Don't do it in the first 90 minutes.
All of this makes me feel of something I've said on the show before that my associate director, Jeff, who's been with me for 26 years, we have this new staff orientation separate. The day camp hires a lot of new people every year,
Yep.
and I've said this before, but he always reminds us, our leadership team. He says, at the end of this 2 hours that we get to meet them for the first time, they have to feel they've made the best decision for their summer, and they're ready
Love
to
it.
deliver it. And he
Love it.
always and we know, like, there's a moment in our organization, and I encourage, where I just turn it over to Jeff, and he's a football coach, so he gives the classic prep pep talk. But at the end of the day, never underestimate how those first impressions, and I agree with you, Kelly. You said they're so simple, but it takes time. You have to think about it. You have to map things out. And the effort you go to knowing, where do the speakers go? Where are we drop if you're busing your staff to training? Where is the point where they disembark from the bus, and who is the first person they see? Because every touch point from getting off the bus to where you're going to give them a hamburger is a moment where you don't want them thinking like, did I make the right decision? You want them knowing every step of the way. So, Steve, this is part of why I was so jacked to get you on here, because it takes some time. I know so many of us are doing this, which is
Yes.
great,
Yeah.
but this reinforcement of the value is so incredible. And you're speaking to two people who love the hype. Like, we still do that. So, like, we're like, in our organizations, we still are those people. But
Good.
I know I come from a generational family camp ownership where my father-in-law knew that wasn't for him. And years ago, he made sure he surrounded himself with people who were on the mic and who did that, because they all knew he was the guy and he ran camp as good as anybody. But he didn't have to be that person who talked about the best songs in the top 40 of the last year, because that just wasn't his thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I have a little rhyme that I've used forever with leadership team training. And I simply say that your position alone sets the tone. People know you're the owner or the program director. You don't need to remind everyone of that. You don't need to run every meeting for them to know it. It's like, and again, it's like youth coaches who wear jackets that say, like, Coach Maguire. Like, hey, we all figured out the way older person is probably in charge. You don't need to brand yourself. Like, everybody knows that. And that's a superpower, honestly, for you to recognize you're not the person to bring the energy is really a superpower for people. But you got to find out whoever those people are, because they will be a difference maker. And Kelly, I appreciate what you said too about just having, like, taking some of those things and writing those ideas down. And at the end, after you plan it, saying, okay, is it going to be all these things for folks?
Yeah, I just feel like that could be you have your opening schedule and in a spreadsheet, and to the right, one of the columns along with, like, where is it? What supplies do we need? Blah, blah, blah. Who's leading it? Like, what does this say about our core values of camp? Like even just your questions, Steve, and I'm looking at them, it says you embrace curiosity. You embrace, like, vulnerability. Like, what are you afraid of this summer? You embrace, like, a mission and purpose. You embrace that, like, a philosophy of kids are awesome. So I just think those simple things really highlight for you of, yeah, why are we doing this and what's important and what does this say? So I like that a lot, and great questions for your speed meeting.
Yes, good call. Love it. You can call it that. Call it the speed. Love it. It's so good.
That's what we call it. I like it.
So good. Howie, you brought up a great point too about this. This kills me. Of all the years I've been doing this, there's always inevitably somebody that's like, I don't need a microphone. Yes, you do. You always need a microphone. Always. Unless you have a group of less than 25, you need a microphone. And there's always people like, I'm uncomfortable with the microphone. And then they put it down and I'm in the back of the room internally screaming, pick up the microphone. 200 people can't hear you and you're screaming. So, and the quality of your sound needs to be good. Like you just said, if I'm in the back of the room, can I see what is physically at the front? It is this is teaching 101. And I will say one of the things that the reason, and I mean it, and people have told me this, one of the reasons I get hired to work with camps is because I'm a teacher. I've been a school teacher for 28 years. I'm in front of kids 180 days, 5 periods a day. for that long a time period, you learn how to manage a group, but you also know when you need to be prepared. And if you're going to have a large group of people, you need to have all those basic things in place. I told this story. He was in the room. I won't say who it was, but he was in the room and he laughed about a camp director. Awesome camp, like phenomenally run, long time summer camp. He was the director and the owner. And it's the day the kids are showing up. You talked about the buses, et cetera. Campers are showing up from hundreds of miles away for bus trips. This is it. This is the moment you signed up for. And the buses are pulling up the road. They're probably 3 minutes from his touch point of being there to greet them. And he was modifying his Spotify playlist. And I pulled him aside and I said, this is like a March 15th thing to do. This is not June 4th. Or get someone else to do the playlist. Like, right. Do this months ago. He's like, oh, you're right. And then I'm like, go see your families. And so he went right, got out there and greeted all the kids. But there is a lot of prep that goes into it. But if it's done well, it runs itself.
I know that some of the things that were on my mind to talk to you about today was the things you talked about in that first 90 minutes around the phrase of just setting the tone of expectations about what this place is all about, whatever your place is. And you talked about things like dealing with phones off and things like that, and what respect looks like. And you had this phrase called "what we tolerate early, we will be chasing all summer," is something that I really also stuck with me. And maybe you can shed a little more color into sort of elaborating on what you mean by that, so some of our listeners can understand what you go after in those first 90 minutes as setting the tone, aside from the joy, the happiness, the movement, and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. So a very good friend of mine, longtime camp director, very successful, got up in front of his staff of 250. First time he addressed his staff, not the first time he'd been there, probably his year 15 of his camp career, but the first time he had seen this staff that year, full group, huge group, and 35% of them are on their phones while he's up addressing the group. Something we all deal with at one point or another. And so I pulled him aside and I said, just so you're aware, and now his admin team, for any administrators that are listening as well and watching that are not the owner director folks, this is your job too. So he's up there in front of the group, 10 administrators, all wearing their polo shirts because he knew they were all the administrators around the room, and all these staff on their phones while they're being addressed by their director, no one doing anything, no one addressing it, no one saying, hey, this is your first 3 minutes with the person that hired you, and you are Snapchatting someone. Like, what are you doing? And I pulled him aside after and I said, I just want to know, this is what I saw. Like, oh man, I get so caught up in what I have to say, I didn't even realize. And I said, I know, but now you're going to be chasing that all summer. If you haven't set the tone for that, or whatever it is, I don't know, whatever people's thing is, whether it's take your sunglasses off. Oh, that kills me, by the way. Like, unless it's a medical emergency or a medical need, which is less than 0.1% of the time, I'm not judging that, but in my 20 years of doing this, it's very rare, but it does happen. It'll be 15 staff members inside wearing sunglasses, and you just let them sit there. I'm like, not okay. You would never speak to kids one-on-one with sunglasses on if you're inside. No one can read your body language. Or earbuds drives me sideways. So many staff,
that's the one.
that are just, they're outstanding at it. They wear dark earbuds and they have dark hair and no one can tell they're in.
And they just have one, and they have one, and it's like, correct. I'm listening.
No, you're not listening. Exactly. Right. So but again, if you let those things go, I can't make it up. I say I can't make it up all the time. I've had plenty of clients say to me, it's just staff training. It'll be different when the kids get here. Lie. You'd lie. You're lying. It's not true. There's no way that's true. They're going to be on their phones and they're going to have their earbuds in during the summer, whether you think they are or not, if you don't immediately address it. And inevitably, I always recommend to people, and this sounds like baiting and sounds a little mean, but this has worked for me and some of my clients. I always tell people to overhire, because you're going to fire somebody in the first couple of days. It's just going to happen, because we think we're hiring 100%ers, everybody, but there's going to be staff that just can't comply, and you're going to have to let them go. And that is a huge tone setter. And I'm not giving people advice to do that, but I am saying you should overhire anyway if it's possible to do that. So just addressing those important cultural things that we all deal with, whether it's overnight camp or I have a great overnight client that I've worked with for maybe 10 years. And this is certainly not novel, but they literally make charging phone boxes now for staff that can put their phones in a locker that charge, because that's staff's number one concern is my phone's going to die. And they just put them in there when they're not with kids and not in their off time, and they get a free charge and they know where their phone is. I know I sound like a dinosaur at 51 saying these things that don't seem that novel, but I still get kids and staff saying, what if there's an emergency? Well, there used to be an emergency before phones, and we just somehow were okay. So it's going to be fine. You'll be fine without it. So it's just even if it's not device related, if it's a body language thing, where I'll give you another perfect example. I'm doing a midsummer training in a camp. There's a song that I sing occasionally if I'm feeling it that day called the Moose, right? So I've always said to myself, like, am I really going to be 55 and singing the Moose? I don't know. But so I'm up in front of a group, I'm singing the Moose, and there's literally like a part where you raise your hands up to your head and you make antlers and you're singing. And I had a staff member in the front row with her arms crossed for the entire Moose. I mean, it's like a 3-minute loud, do as I do, say as I say song. And I immediately went to the director. I was like, you saw that person in the front row. And the director said, yeah, she's kind of having a tough summer. I'm like, you think? Like, but I'm like, you've tolerated that till July? So I'm like, how is she with kids? She's like, she's not that good. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You're like, so if day one you sing the Moose and you have staff that are horrified and that's not their vibe, which is okay. Like, they might be amazing in other areas, but if their body language is communicating, I'd rather do something else, then you're already getting your message. So it's all those things to look out for. I know I'm going off, but I want to tell you this.
No, it's great.
If you're an administrator, your job because particularly when staff come together in those 90 minutes, your job, you're on. Like, the last thing you should be doing is like, I need to go do some administrative paperwork. No, you don't. You need to be in front of and with that group of staff, watching every single interaction. Phones, earbuds, that person looks socially awkward already. This person hasn't made eye contact with anybody for the last 45 minutes. This person's wearing a hood and is like kind of hiding back. You should, and I use this term all the time, you should be looking for red flags. You're not doing damage assessment the whole time, but you're looking for red flags and for staff that are like, wow, that person's awesome. Future assistant director, program director, already in the first 90 minutes. That is 100% the administrative team's job.
And I think that it has me thinking about so many things. Kelly and I, you and I have talked about this. Is first of all, Steve, I made a note of this and I wanted you to talk about it. But what you're addressing is that good stuff that I heard at Tri-State around levels of engagement. You're watching for levels of engagement from people, and we can talk about that in just a moment. But I also think about onboarding. I think about during the hiring process, just I've said this before, my part of my process is that I get to do group Zoom calls where I'm doing the hype for 45 minutes. If you really want to go down the road of getting a job at Camp Robin Hood, you got to go through Howie, who's going to tell you why he loves this place and what we expect. And if you're down, let's talk. But if you're not, so one of the examples that resonated with me, Steve, is the idea is that I'm very clear that I'm that guy who's in his mid 50s who's still on the roof dancing, and there's no better feeling that's seeing every staff member dancing along with the guy who doesn't have the moves. So
Correct.
if you're the kind of person who's going to sit back, I'm not sure if this is the place for you, because we're all taking chances and we're getting a little uncomfortable. And when everyone's crossing arms to sing our traditional song, I'm on the stage. I can see everybody. So
Right.
so I think that there's something for those observations at training, but there's a real opportunity to set the tone for what they're coming into that can really call it hedge your bets or whatever you want. At least they've been told, like, we're getting silly in the first day of pre-camp. Like, be ready to be silly or
Right.
whatever it might look like, because it's a window, as you're suggesting, it's a window into how they're going to be the first time the kids come.
Yeah, and that will change, obviously.
Sure.
I mean, there's going to be some staff that are going to be more reserved and won't look as enthused, and they're still going to be awesome. Like,
Exactly.
because you're going to have kids like that. You're going to have kids that, you know, I'll say now, after all the years of doing this, as I sit as an audience member, as a teacher, in some of this get to know you stuff at 51 in my 29th year teaching next year, I know I'm like, I'll do my best. And I've done this a long time. But if you're 18, you haven't done 28 of these. So, like, you should be on board. Or if you're 23 or whatever. And age isn't a thing either. But, you know, I, to my own, like, demise a little bit, should be a little bit more enthused in my own professional life sometimes. And I get it that, like, sometimes these aren't your thing, but people are looking for something. If you just send off the vibe that you're completely anti-establishment and this isn't your thing, it's just, you're going to stand out. And I say it a lot. Some kid, because kids have no filter, if you are not having fun, some camper is going to come up to you and be like, what's up? Why aren't you having as much fun as everybody else? And you might have no answer. So
yeah. And
Yeah.
and Kelly, just before, I know because this is so up your alley, because you're so good at the conversation, you, Kelly, at like digging into, like, is something up? Like what's up? I see that you're not doing this. And I think what we're all saying, and Steve, you said it well, is like, these are observations, but we have opportunities to dig into, like, why this is happening or what's happening, and the new person versus the returning person. And so I just wanted to say that because I know Kelly is really, really good at having those conversations with staff.
Well, thank you, Howie. I like that what you brought up, Steve, about you'll have some staff like exhibiting certain behaviors that are similar to children. It's like you can't, I tell staff this in interviews, and I think what you're speaking to is there can't be whatever your staff number is, let's say it's 65. There can't be 65 Howies and there can't be 65 Kellys and 65 Steves. Like I tell them, everybody has strengths and everybody has growth opportunities. And so there are going to be things that you bring to the table that others don't. And it has to be depth of your team. But I do think, like you said, at least if they're willing to try and be in, and even if they look super uncomfy, but they're clapping and moose fingering and it's so hard, they're still trying. So I love that you talked about that. I really resonated also with, I think that's for sure a growth area of mine is I tolerate some things early. I bring the juice. That is a strength. I bring the juice. I'm all in. I can spread that. But I do think that I tolerate too much early, like during staff training of my returners talking in the corner, whatever it is, right? But for me, that's a good reminder of like what you tolerate early, Kelly, you will be chasing. So I like that. It's a good reminder for me. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is you talked about overhire. But now here's the struggle, especially with our camp. And I don't know if the two of you have advice or some listener email me, but where I don't overhire, I have specialty extra positions that do miscellaneous things at camp. But my question is, let's say I overhire. Like I have this person that I interviewed who's amazing. I really want to hire her, but I'm full. If I overhired, but that person doesn't have a role, right? So like if I fire someone and they'd be a great counselor to step in, but prior to our camp, everybody knows like you're an archery lead and you're a second grade counselor. Like, what do you do with those extra people you hire if they don't have a specific role?
such a good question, and it's one of the best things you could possibly do as far as I'm concerned, because you'll have somebody that, so say, all right, let's say best case, say you hire 3 of those people, right? You have 3 amazing people that are not the director of archery and you don't know what to do with them. They are an amazing person to facilitate in moments of mealtime, in moments of evening program stuff, of moments where they're going to be willing to do anything. And it's a great question. I had a client last year that had a couple of these folks, and they were part of they met with the admin team. They weren't administrators, but they would meet with the admin team, and everybody was like, wow, you know what, I could definitely need some our land sports definitely need some help in prep today because they're doing a big activity, and they would take this person, send them to land sports for the first half of the day, and then the afternoon they were in charge of going around to the bunks during the camp siesta time that they had, or rest time they had after. So sort of making a role for them throughout, almost on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, is what they did, because they just knew they were better. Camp was better if those people were there because of the person they were. And it didn't matter if they had a title. I mean, I had another client a couple of years ago that this was awesome. They said that they told this person, like, you are the coach of fun. Like, your job is to create smiles and joy somewhere on camp throughout the course of the day during program activities, or those tweener moments where your kids are transferring or going from one activity to another. And so it seems like kind of a fluff job, but at the same time, it's those same staff that were so good at working with kids. Like, they would have great conversations with kids. They were the person that staff really enjoyed hanging out with. Like, so I think it's good if they don't have a specific role. It's okay to keep them around, because camp is better with them on the property. And when you really need them, if something were to happen, a crisis, a van breaks down, you need somebody to fill in somewhere, bang, they're right there for those specific things.
So it's like a returner, but they also know that if I have to fire, in residential terms, cabin counselor, but for us to
Yep.
be a group leader, that they would potentially step in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And just, I mean, somebody that, that particularly if you have a history with them, their strengths and what they need to get better at. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's
I
great. I
think
think it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think for me, we've been really wrestling with this. Number one, in a day camp space, we're dealing with absenteeism, right? They make the choice to come in every day. So having those people solves ratio issues and burnout, like if someone has had a co-staff that is not showing up, et cetera, et cetera. But I do agree, Steve, like we've created a model where we've saved these positions for some of our returning veterans who are probably on the cusp of more leadership, but have personality and versatility. And in some of these roles, I've heard from them as I re-interview staff coming back, they often felt that in this role, the curtain was drawn back on camp operations in a way
yes,
that they don't see when they're a frontline staff member, because we're often brainstorming, hey, we've got this new program on Friday, it's Wednesday, you guys, are you guys good? Like, Johnny, our assistant program director, needs so much help here. It's really drawing back the curtain. And you know what? I also find that when staff are involved at that layer of planning, the talk spreads around the camp around, oh, they did this because they were trying to save money, or they did this because they didn't have time to plan it. And these people actually become advocates to say, like, actually, I did that, and that was something that they put a lot of effort in. So I think there's a lot of collateral benefits to having those extra staff. And I think we have found, I may not want to give that to a 20-year-old who's never been in my setting, who doesn't know it necessarily. But if you have the luxury of having, like I'm currently going through, like many of us are in Canada, college and universities are finishing like right now. They haven't
right.
thought about their summer. I'm getting lots of phone calls. Howie, do you got 4 weeks for me? Can I come back? And this is the role that I give those people. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
great.
cool.
And particularly if they know your culture and their backstory, it's even more helpful.
Yeah. But yes, they do save our bacon when some people are not off to a great start, and you get to replace them with those extra staff. So there's total value in that for sure. Amazing. Steve, you talked a little bit about the first 90 minutes, talking about the days are long, but the summers are short. That message.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about sort of the development of using that as some talking points to first time talking to staff around. I'm just curious if you could expand on where that all goes to in ultimate messaging.
Yeah, I love it. So, I mean, I've learned this as a parent, so I haven't talked too much about this, but we talked before we started. So my wife and I have 4 kids, ages 15, 13, 11, and 10. And there is it's either a poem or I don't know what it is, I think or an Instagram post or something that is referred to as the last. And it simply talks about how there's going to be a last time when you're able to pick up your daughter or your son, like physically pick them up. There's going to be a last time you go to a playground. There's going to be a last time you give them their last bottle. Those are, as a parent, those are significant events. You just don't, I mean, if you ask any parent, what was the date that happened? What was the date the last time you went to the Purple Dinosaur, which is the one place we lived as parents when our kids were little? I don't know the date, and I didn't know that day that it was going to be the last day. And would I have hung on to that a little bit longer that day? Probably, because that place was so special to us. And now our life is going in a totally different direction. And the reason I bring it up is because at camp, I certainly didn't come up with this, but I've heard it a million times. A day is like a week at camp, and a week is like a month. And you think, all of a sudden you think, oh, I'll be able to give that kid an award tomorrow, or I'll be able to play catch with the kids in my cabin outside between last period and dinner. It's kind of hot out. I'll do it tomorrow. And then all of a sudden it's August 22nd and camp's over. There's no tomorrow. And I guess I'd put it out there to people as you have such a short window of camp to send it. Like I always tell people this, like you should be absolutely exhausted at the end of the summer. Like you should have nothing left in your soul if you've done it the right way. And I know it sounds a little extreme and dramatic, but if you really do that, you talk about being empty nesters, and my wife Jess and I talk about it all the time. Like we can't even envision what that's going to look like. But all of a sudden you're going to look back and you won't have to drive anybody anywhere. The pitter patter of little feet will be over. Like all those things that you think you have time for at camp, you don't. So take advantage of as much time as you can in that time with kids, because all of a sudden it's over and you're just staring at an empty cabin. And I use this analogy a lot. When camp is over, if anyone's ever run on a treadmill, if you look down, hopefully you've never had to really use it. There's an emergency switch or button. You're supposed to wear a clip now too that's attached to you, that if you fall down, it stops the treadmill. No one actually wears that clip. But the day after camp ends, it's like running really fast on a treadmill, and then someone hits that emergency button and everything comes to a shuddering halt. And if you're emotionally invested in this work, there's a massive sadness to that. So the upswing of that is, let there be so much joy in the short amount of time that you have with kids.
Well, great. Now that someone who's sending their kid to college in the fall, I'm trying to keep the misty eyes and for Clint feeling in my throat off. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Right. Hug them. Go hug your kids.
I'm going to go lay in their bed and cry for the next hour. But anyway, no, that was great and super inspirational, and it was like we planned this moment at the end. So I would like to move on to our rapid fire questions, because we're like you, Steve. We could probably talk to you for hours. And I'm kind of thinking, where have you been my whole camp life?
So here, I want to tell you, it's interesting. So I do need to tell this part of the story. So in 2000, COVID hit. So when I spoke at Tri-State this year, I hadn't been there for 6 years. Prior to that, I had been there, I want to say, for the previous 13 years in a row. And I was very fortunate. And again, I mean this in the most respectful and hopefully comes across relatively humble way as possible. I was filling those huge rooms. I was not at the height of my speaking business, but things were going well. And I came home. I didn't speak in 2020. I missed a couple ones after that. And the big picture also, I also found myself I kind of love being home. I live in the town I teach in. I have a 7-minute ride to work. from where I'm sitting right now, it's literally 0.21 miles to the end of the beach where we live on the ocean. And it really helped me hit the reset button of, I enjoy the camp work. Don't get me wrong. I love my teaching job as well. But I also was like, I don't really want to leave. So I took a big chunk of time where I made, I'm super fortunate that this was the case. I sent out 0 inquiries and made 0 effort to get any clients. But I would get emails and reach outs from people I had worked with previously. And that sustained me for the last 4 or 5 years. And now my kids are a little bit older, and Jess is totally on board with this. She's like, you can ramp it back up again if you want. And I've been doing that a little bit, but it's nice of you to say, but I also like it. It definitely helped me hit the reset button a little bit too, because when my son is hitting a home run in Little League and I'm at a hotel in St. Louis by myself, that's miserable. And people are always like, how is Miami? I'm like, I have no idea. I was in an airport, a hotel, and a rental car for 3 days. I don't know how Miami is. Like, people think I'm on vacation. I'm not on vacation. So, but anyway, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm certainly looking to ramp things back up just a little bit. So.
Wow. I'm enjoying your reemergence.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from you, and this was awesome and could talk to you forever, but we'll save that for when we get to see each other in person again. But
All
right, rapid fire questions. It's how we always end our podcast. Steve, Howie, and I are Brene Brown fan club vice presidents, not officially, but unofficially in the camp world. And she used to do this on her podcast. So we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions, and you're just going to give us the gut answer that comes. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Got it. Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Number 1, what is your favorite camp meal?
Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Makes me hungry. If you could lead any program area at a camp, what would it be?
Nature.
S'mores, burnt or golden brown?
Absolutely golden brown.
Patience. He's a man of patience. As a camper, if you were a camper or imagining yourself, did you miss home and it kind of made it hard to enjoy camp? Or were you like, peace out, parents, see you at pickup day?
Definitely miss home.
Okay. Mr. Michael Brandwine would say that that's a really positive trait. He was our last. So as a camp pro, would you rather be in the phone doing or in the office doing logistics and on the phone or out in the action? I think I know, but I'm going to ask.
100% out in the action.
All right. Favorite camp song. Last one.
The Moose by far.
Knew that was good. I love that.
Is it like da 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 da, that one?
No. So it's got a Jamaican twist to it. And it literally goes like the moose, swimming on the water, eating his supper. Where did he go? And it goes on like that. So yeah, it's a different version, but it's great.
Okay. I like it. Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Outro, Howie, take us there.
Well, Steve, it's been awesome to have you reconnect and to have you on the show. So much good stuff. And I think this is the springboard to more opportunities to connect with you and talk about all the things that are on your mind in the camp space. If people want to connect with you, if they are looking at filling a gap in their training or a visit to camp, and what's the best way to connect with you, Steve?
So the best thing probably to do is go to my website, which is goturnstone.com. It's GOTURNSTONE.com. The 30-second version of why it's called that is my business is named after a bird. One of the courses I teach is ornithology, and I named my business after a bird called a ruddy turnstone, which is the only migrating shorebird that's made the evolutionary adaptation to take its bill and put it under stones and turn them over to find more food. And the reason I named my business after that is because a lot of the things that I talk about and do in training, you may have had a different or similar version of in the past, but I think I bring a pretty unique perspective to it. And I've made that adaptation that with lots of birds migrating, but only this one bird does this a certain way. And I feel like I kind of do things a certain way in my training. So they can go to goturnstone.com and reach out through the portal there. Or I tell people, honestly, like you can absolutely text me. I could care less. And I will give my cell number. And if there's people spamming me on this, they're just bored and need to find something else to do. So my cell is 781-556-1206. And it's an easy way to get in touch with me. Text me anytime, and I mean it, like, could care less. And I would love to help out and work with anybody that would like to do that.
Wow. That
Wow.
kind of
That's the
access
first time
is
we've had digits shared on the podcast.
digits.
Ha!
Yeah, but that's next level access to someone who can help you out. I love that. I love that. Kelly, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Usually my email, Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com. Otherwise, I am on the Instagram at KJShuna3 or my Instagram at camp, HPR underscore.
Love that.
I don't know if I'm up to the cell phone level. No, people can always see.
Uh,
We'll leave Steve with that glory today.
Of course. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at Howie at camprobinhood.ca, on Insta at Howie Grossinger, or at Camp Robin Hood if you're looking to check out our camp in the suburbs of Toronto. Check it out. Once again, as always, we want to thank our friends at Camp Brain and Camptivities for making this show possible. Please don't forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff there from not only our show, but all the other amazing Go Camp Pro podcasts that are out there. We hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for listening. Kelly, wishing you a most successful, happy, healthy, safe summer, and to all of our listeners. And we're going to be back for season 6. See you in the fall. Thanks for listening to the Camp Owners Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Camp Owners Podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, you can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. The Camp Owners Podcast is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. Find a podcast for camp pros of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Hey Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, a masterclass, from the Summer Camp Pros group on Facebook, at a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, we can encourage camp pros to keep freely sharing their brilliant ideas and make the camp industry better. Thanks very much.